Do you wanna ride in the backseat of a caddy?
In the early 90s, MC Hammer was the biggest rap star on the planet. He had sold millions of records with hits like Too Legit to Quit, Pray, and Can't Touch This. He had endorsements, he had commercials, he had everything. But with his positive image, it's also a misconception that Hammer is considered to be soft. In this episode, I'm going to talk about two different incidents involving Hammer, where he had to show people that he was not soft and that in fact, he was a certified gangster. MC Hammer was born and raised in Oakland, California, at a time where the country was torn apart. See, it was a big Black Panther movement in Oakland at the time. Heroin was the drug of choice in Oakland at that time, but crack cocaine was making its way to the streets, and it was coming in heavy. A guy by the name of Felix Mitchell would see this as an opportunity to make money, and he had very much success in the streets. At one point, it was said that he was making $1 million a month easy. Pushing heroin on the street, it made money, but pushing crack on the street can make even more, double, triple the profits. Felix Mitchell and his 6ix9ine crew would go on to take over Oakland. The same neighborhood that he took over, the same neighborhood that MC Hammer was born and raised in. So Hammer grew up around gangsters. He knew how the streets go. In 1985, Felix Mitchell and his crew was took down by the feds in a big RICO case. He was eventually tried and convicted of tax evasion and numerous drug charges. His reign at the top came crashing down when he was sentenced to life in prison in the feds. The plan was that he'd keep running the streets from behind bars, but in less than a year, he was stabbed to death in his cell by his cellie. His funeral was lavish and it was fit for a king. A lot of attention was put on the funeral, so much so that it got news coverage that spread throughout the United States. I was able to find a clip and I want you to see this. It was torn feelings about how the community felt about Felix Mitchell, and you're gonna see that in this clip right here.
Just a little bit more room, please. Just when the East Bay thought one of its most notorious hoods was gone forever, he came back to star in a funeral production fit for a king. Alas, it was his own. 32-year-old convicted drug racketeer Felix Mitchell was stabbed to death last week in his cell at Leavenworth. Mitchell was convicted in San Francisco federal court earlier this year after allegations that he was the kingpin in an East Oakland heroin dealership that featured fancy cars, flashy parties, and murders. Murders including victims who had nothing to do with Mitchell's mob, innocent people who were killed merely by accident. His neighborhood, however, was divided today on whether Felix Mitchell was a hero or a villain.
The family has a right to a private funeral. I don't think they have a right to force this kind of thing on the community in Oakland, and I'm very upset about it. Felix dealt in drugs over here in the village for years. He used young kids to deal with drugs. I don't think any of us here want our kids to be brought up that way. And I think this is a good example of what happens when you deal with drugs.
If you put some jobs here, maybe we won't have this on the streets of Oakland. That's what it takes. You understand?
I know what he done. He was a good man. And we need to tell the city officials that if they get the jobs out there, then maybe it wouldn't be so much drugs in Oakland.
There were others interested in the garish parade that made its way right down San Pablo Avenue, tying up traffic and amazing onlookers.
This is totally ridiculous.
And they were the detectives who helped send Mitchell to prison. We're heading towards Lake Merritt.
A lot of people outside of Oakland, California, they wasn't aware about Hammer mob ties. So his squeaky clean image and his positive music and message and his music will have other rappers thinking that Hammer was soft. It will be two rappers in particular that would test Hammer gangster. And this is when the world found out that he was a certified gangster. LL Cool J, another big time rapper from Queens, New York, will be one of the first ones to send shots at Hammer. LL was already established. He had hits at this time, but he wasn't on Hammer level. In fact, no one was. He would send shots at Hammer on his album, Mama Said Knock You Out, on the single To the Break of Dawn, where he would diss Hammer the entire second verse. During that same year, LL Cool J's smash single, Mama Said Knock You Out, would cause him to have to make press runs to promote the album, as the single was making millions and millions of dollars. During his press run, he would have to come to the West Coast, LA, Oakland in particular, When he did his show, Hammer and his crew pulled up backstage to pay him a little visit and talk about the shots being thrown at him. During the confrontation backstage, things got intense. LL tried to play Hammer like he was soft, even though he was in his backyard on his home turf. Things got messy, argument broke out, and as LL's security was trying to get him through the venue, someone reached out and punched LL in the head or the back of the head. It's unclear to this day who threw the punch. Whether it was Hammer or it was someone in his crew. Gangsterism was met that night, and LL was where that Hammer wasn't playing. The next day, it was advised to LL that he needed to get out the West Coast immediately, and the rumor has it that he was followed all the way to LA. The beef was squashed between the two immediately, so much so that they both went on a press run together, where they would sign autographs and did a few shows together, just to show that it's all good between the two of them. This time, Hammer was making so much money, it was ridiculous. He was bringing in millions a year. And his millions mostly was coming from his endorsements. He had commercials, he had cartoons, he had action figures, he had cereal, he had everything in the early 90s. So he splurged on himself. It was reportedly said that Hammer bought a house in Oakland that cost $5 million. Came with the indoor pool, outdoor pool, gold sinks, gold tubs, 10-car garage, waterfall in the front. I even heard he had a waterfall in there. He also shot one of his videos, I believe it was Pumps in the Bumps, at this very house. Hammer had a massive car collection. Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys, you name it, Hammer had it. And when it came to the jury, Hammer was more iced out than average rappers. He was more iced out than major rappers. He owned horses. Hammer had everything. And when Hammer got on, his crew got on. His payroll consisted of hundreds of people. Dancers, cooks, drivers, you name it, they was a part of Hammer crew. A lot of the people that was in that crew was a part of the 6ix9ine crew. So Hammer had hitters around him. Just the people outside of Oakland didn't know that. Rap group Third Base, they had to find out the hard way about Hammer gangsterism. They was also throwing shots at Hammer on their album, and even dissed him in the music video for the Gas Face. Third Base and MC Hammer would go back and forth, and it eventually ended with Third Base doing a press run in California while at the radio station. MC Hammer calls in and confronted him on the air. MC Hammer kept it player, he didn't make no threats or anything, and everything seemed smooth. The real drama came after that. While shopping at the Beverly Center in LA, Third Base would be approached by several men wanting to get at him for the comments that they made. Security was able to get them out of the mall quickly without being harmed. Later on, it would be said that it was threats made to them and that they hurried and get up out of California. It was a long time mystery in hip-hop about this incident, where Third Base would allege that Hammer put a $50,000 bounty on her head, and this bounty was allegedly picked up by the Rolling 60 Crips, which is the biggest Crip gang in California. Most recently, Third Base had went on multiple platforms and talked about this and said that yes, it was real. And Eric B from the group Eric B and Rakim, he was the one that confirmed that the $50,000 was put on her head by MC Hammer. Hammer wasn't no joke. Whether it was true or not, we'll never know. Through the rest of the 90s, MC Hammer will fall on hard times, mainly because of how many people he had on payroll. It was costing him millions of dollars to have his whole city with him, and he would end up filing for bankruptcy. To make an effort to come back in rap music, he would try to put a gangster rap album out. Being that he had gangsters around him, Hammer felt like he has the gangster persona. This was a complete fail. He had singles like Pumps in the Bumps, and I can't even remember the other one, that's how bad it was. But people really didn't want to see Hammer like this. He was a positive guy, and to see him try to do gangster rap that was popular at the time, it was a major fail. He would end up losing it all. He went bankrupt, he lost the cars, the jury, and he lost the big house. But it wouldn't be the end for him. When Tupac Shakur was released from prison and signed with Death Row, him and MC Hammer would become real cool. They became real close friends. They would take a lot of trips together, they would talk, and Hammer, he understand Pac, and Pac understood Hammer. They was real cool, real tight. It was also said that Hammer was with Tupac on the night that he was killed in Vegas in 1996. After the death of Tupac Shakur, Hammer would go on a permanent hiatus from hip-hop. Being that him and Pac was so close, his death really hit him hard. Hammer went back to church. He went back to his roots, because you gotta remember Hammer grew up in the church. Gangster rap ultimately pushed Hammer out of hip-hop. And even though it's been decades removed since Hammer was in the spotlight, he actually laid the groundwork for rappers to get money outside of rap. What he was laughed about then, there's a lot of your favorite rappers doing it now, making money. So you need to thank Hammer, because he opened the door for people. Showed you how to get money in hip-hop when nobody else was doing it. If you liked the video, like and subscribe, and you know I'm coming with more. Peace.